Unfortunately, I've actually recorded about 40 minutes of video, but uh, with no sound, so my microphone decided to leave us. So I have to switch to a different microphone just to record. Okay, so basically what we did, I'm just going to go over what I did and the changes. It's stuff we've seen before. Okay, so we do not have to worry that much about it. And we're just going to see the code. Okay, so basically what I did is create an item manager with items and of course this. First of all, let's see the resources manager because it's the simplest one and that's from where it starts. Let's wait till this opens. So actually let's start from the items, and the items is just an abstract class from a scriptable object. Now from that abstract class I'm creating the weapons, which has a game object for the FPS prefab. As I was saying, uh, in the actual game, if you're going to be making this into an actual game, you're going to also have a third-person shooter prefab and not just the FPS prefab. The FPS prefab will be what has the animations for your FPS. Okay, usually that's a higher resolution mesh, so yeah, you do not want to be spawning or instantiating FPSs, well, high resolution meshes on everywhere. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Then I have my fire rate, which is a serialized field, so it's not accessible from outside of the class, and when I want to get it, I'm just getting it from this. Okay, then from that we create our resources manager, which has all our items and a dictionary, and when we need it, we basically take all our items, use the names as IDs, and add them into the item dictionary. When we want to get the item, we use the method. This is something we have done so many times in the past, so I don't really think you're going to have any problems with this. And then on the runtime weapon is a class that will see by itself, but basically all we need for right now is the base weapon and the init method, which gets you the base weapon and of course the particle systems that you might want to add below your object. So back to the resource manager. When we want to get a weapon instance, we do not get the actual item, the actual scriptable object. We get the item where we first get it. If it's not a weapon, if it cannot be casted as a weapon, then that means your ID is wrong. So we simply return null. Then we create a weapon, cast it as a weapon. Then we instantiate that prefab, and we get the runtime weapon for that, initiate it, disable it so that we can disable it when we parent it underneath our controller. Okay, that's basically the base for this. The other one, how do we access the resource manager? I'm creating a static class settings which has a static private variable for resource manager and a public variable for resource manager, which just gets you this private method, of course, with a getter. Now, if the first time you call this, the resource manager is going to be null, so we're going to load it from our resources. We're going to initialize it and then simply return it, which means I can now go onto my FPS controller. First of all, I have the handle local controller encapsulated, and if you are local, you're going to be running it. Okay, if it's not local, then it's a client, then we do not want any of this to be running, obviously. Same with the start, we do get the references, but if it's local, we're only instantiating this, and most importantly, we also get the weapon instance, and we have a method that equips it on the position we have. We're only going to have two weapons with, yeah, we'll see later. So I have starting weapon, weapon 1, weapon 2, and the current weapon we have. Okay, and also we have some optimization with our delta. We also need the transform for the guard parent, and previously we had an issue with the torque. I still haven't fixed it, so I was trying to fix it and then split up the look transform, the tilt transform, and the pivot transform, but end up basically this being the entire rotation for, you know, up and down, up, down, left and right for your camera. We'll see this in a bit more thorough. Okay, so handle local controller, the changes. We have aiming and shooting now, and this is for the move direction. Okay, the pivot will, it's for the torque, but we do not apply it. I removed it from the application, so it doesn't work right now. So we have our tilt angle, which based on the dot from our wall up is going to either add on our look angle or remove from our look angle, so we basically can rotate. Okay, and then we take the lock oilers, make them into a single look oiler, and just use the tilt transform. Now, which means I think we don't even use the look transform anymore. We don't use it, so we can delete it. So, with that said, after we have control all our rotation and stuff like that, we have shooting and we have aim down sights. Aim down sights is really simple, and there's actually a wasp in the room, so hold on. Okay, so we're going to say that aiming down sights is going to be always the vector 3 position underneath your camera. Okay, taking with that, we're going to be creating the default position, which is basically the position you see down here when the gun is not aiming down sights, and we're simply going to be lerping from whatever position we are to the target position. That means if you're aiming down sights, then that will be vector 3.0, and we simply lerp the current weapon's local position to that position. When we want to equip it, if you're not local, you're simply going to be doing something else, so do return. But if you are, if position is 0, then that means drop the previous weapon you have on position 1 and store it there. And also, if it's weapon 2, then do it for the weapon 2. Otherwise, just transparent the transform underneath the gun parent and reset the local position and local rotation and open it up again and store it inside current weapon, which we also call first time at here equipped. Okay, that's pretty much it for that. Then when we want to shoot, we have the variable here and the bool for it, shoot, and down here we have saved when did we last shot, and if the real time since startup minus last shot is greater than the base fire rate, then we actually shoot. Right now we're doing particle shooting, so we just play the particle for that. If this is not true, then simply return false, you're not shooting. We want to return the bull that you're shooting so that we can do recoil and stuff like that later. Right now we're not going to see it. Okay, and let's say one more thing that I want to say. I'm using real time since startup. There is one trick to this, however. This is easier to do. Well, actually, with this, you do not have to do additional checks through multiplayer and stuff like that. Okay, but if you press escape, then time.real time in startup will be, you know, will basically keep going while last shot will be like this. Technically, if somebody tries to, you know, steal, well, we're now talking about fragments of a second, so if somebody is fast enough that he's faster than the fire rate of an automatic weapon to press escape and keep firing, well, I don't know what to tell you there. Just let him have it. Okay, so that's for the scripts. Let's see the setup, because it's a bit of a setup. Okay, I have my controller, I have my tilt, and I have my gun parent. Underneath the gun parent there is a camera, and the camera, the weapon actually doesn't need to be on the same level or on the same parent as or beneath the camera. Okay, this is a prefab. It's disabled. We're not using this one actually. So the idea with this is setting up the weapon to be right on the center. I have added a UI image right on the center, okay, just to know where this is it, and I've set this up to be at 0, 0, 0, and then underneath the model I'm placing it so that is actually where I want it to be. Okay, so we take that. If this is our aiming down sights position, then we can just move it around, find the position we want this to be for when not aiming down sights, which for me it will be this. Okay, this is done into a prefab. Make it into a prefab, add the default positions here, the data for that, and then create the plasma rifle, add it here, add the fire rate you want this to have. I think 0.2 will do fine for me, and add the prefab. We can delete this. Then onto your controller you can write on your static weapon, you can add this variable. Okay, and also we need, yeah, I forgot one thing, but well, you can see that this is actually working. We also need a resource manager, which you create with right click, resource manager weapon. Okay, and we need to add the weapons you're going to have here. So let's create another weapon, but let's first let me find an actual weapon that worth doing. So I have this revolver. I'm just going to parent it underneath my gun parent. Since you see that this is all 0, and it's definitely not the position we want to have when aiming down sights, so I'm just going to create an empty game object which sits at 0, 0, 0, and I'm going to parent the prefab below. Well, I'm going to unpack it first completely. So on this revolver I'm going to add the runtime weapon script, and now we need to find the, well, first we need to find the position this needs to be when aiming down sights. If you're also clipping with the camera, just change the clipping planes to just write 0 and it will default back to the minimum it can get. And this needs to be slightly bigger, to be honest, so that we can see. And maybe let's move this entirely down. Maybe even more then. Just so that we know where we're actually seeing. Okay. Let's move this here. Now obviously I wouldn't really set it up like this. It's not that fun. Yeah, okay, something like that I guess can be for this one. So this will be your aiming down sights. Okay, we know this is 0, 0, 0, so we do not have to save anything. Let's fix the normal position, which it can be something like this. For this gun, I guess. It feels a little bit stretched though, so we might have to fix something else. Or do it a little bit differently, we'll see. Okay, so let's maybe do it like this. Yeah, something like that, yes. Okay, good enough. So I have the position, I'm going to save it simply like that, and then let's go under data, weapons. I'm going to take the revolver. I have my prefab, then I can delete this, and I'm going to add beneath it, I'm going to create a new weapon. Let's call it the revolver. Open it up, just drop the fire rate, and let's change the fire rate to 5. Now obviously I think I do not have, yeah, I do not have the particle scene, so I'm going to parent both of them, and I'm going to duplicate from my plasma rifle, I have a particle, which is this one. I'm going to duplicate that and drop it underneath my revolver, then delete this one, we don't need it. Can parent this below, and let's see. Let's make sure it's on the correct position. I'm going to rotate it slightly, raise it up. I'm going to make it bigger so it looks more menacing. Okay, good enough. Let's override everything and delete it. So now let's say I wanted to have this onto my game object. I can do revolver, but first you also need to have it added onto our resource manager. Yeah, I have play on awake on my particles, that's why the fire. Okay, so I have aiming with aiming down sides. Another thing you can do that it can actually sell a little bit the logic some more. We can do this right on the FPS controller, to be honest, because you can do public float FOV normal, and I'm going to set that to 40, and then onto the weapon you can do public float FOV ADS, and let's do FOV ADS. Let's initialize it to maybe 35, just a tiny nudge, we don't really need much. So the same thing we're doing here, we could also say float or float FOV normal, and if you're aiming FOV current weapon. Yeah, we kinda need to access it from the base weapon. So let's do random weapon public float FOV ADS get return base weapon dot FOV ADS. FOV. Then we have float v mathf.lerp camera dot main dot field of view to FOV, and all that delta multiplied by 10 or 11, and of course camera dot main dot field of view equals FV. Okay, this will spice it up a bit. Press space, press play, not space. Okay, and now you have, and you can change it so each weapon has its own references. And I think our particle is a little bit offset, but whatever. Awesome. Now, oops. The other thing that we can do is to actually have two starting weapons. Secondary weapon. And actually let's rename this to main weapon. And let's also assign a value to this. Let's say plasma rifle and revolver. So now we can take the equip, and we can also say runtime weapon mw mw here as well. Okay, so instead of runtime weapon, let's do no. Okay, let's do that. This will go on equip, and then we can just say weapon 2 is w, and say that whenever we're pressing tab, if input, no, we do have tab, if input dot get key down key code, let's do alpha 1, if weapon, if current weapon equals weapon 1, if weapon 2 is not null, then current weapon, not current weapon, equip weapon 2 on position 1, of course, which is position 2, and else if current weapon is weapon 2 and weapon 1 is not null, equip weapon 1 2 0 2. So on equip, if current weapon is not null, current weapon set game object set active for false. And it's actually not working. We have some issues. Oh, I think it's because, is it because of this? So if current weapon equals weapon 1 and weapon 2 is not null, equip weapon 2. Weapon 2, anti-weapon. Oh, hold on. Actually, you know what? Let's do alpha 1, equip weapon 1, 0 if weapon 1 is not null. Okay, and then alpha 2 if weapon 2 . Let's try this. And also we forgot one thing. Oh yeah, it was working, but we had the same weapon on both. Damn it. Yeah, we had the same weapon on both cases. That's why it wasn't actually working like that. Okay, there we go. Let's fix the prefab as well. So they do not actually shoot. Perfect. Save that. Let's hit play. Let's try it, and I think we're done with this part. We can of course add more things like ammo counting and stuff like that, but that will be something for a different part. So that's it for this one. Unfortunately, I've lost the, well, I recorded the entire thing without, and the microphone was broken, so it didn't record sound, so I had to do this style again. Okay, on the next one, everything is, we're going to go back to from scratch. So let's finish with this. As always, you know what to do: like, subscribe, and if you like to see more stuff like this, consider supporting my Patreon so we can keep making everything we're doing so far. I'll see you on the next one.